Hi everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about some summaries of a couple of the chapters in Reinventing Project-Based Learning, your field guide to the real-world projects in the digital age. So for this video, I read chapters 3 through 5 and basically just going to summarize a little bit what I got out of each chapter. So in chapter 3, it basically starts off by kind of launching you um, into this idea of creating some kind of project for project-based learning and kind of where to begin. So the book starts off by providing ideas for how you can begin on that journey in creating project-based learning for your classroom, for your kids, your students. Um, so it begins by discussing how, as the teacher, it's obviously up to you to know the content standards and what is supposed to be taught. And from there, gathering a couple of big ideas of what the kids are going to be learning and going from there. And narrowing, so once you get this big idea or a theme, and then narrowing it down to an actual project and what that would look like. So they say to scan the standards and table of contents to get just some big ideas. One thing they mentioned for all the gathering of information and as you're putting your project together to create a wiki page, it's just a way to gather information and kind of collect it, organize it as you're putting the project together. And it's like a nice way to save all that information. So once you have your big idea and you've created this space for planning, the next thing is to ask a couple of questions to yourself and about the project, like who cares about this subject, um, who does it affect or how does it affect the world, who interacts with this topic in their work or daily life, because the main thing that the book focuses on is that it's an authentic project, and do the activities required of the students part of the project, do they even take place in real life? Do they matter in the real world? Like, where is the relevance for it? Another thing that they focus on is that the project learning crosses over or involves many disciplines. So if the project involved something in science, but you could also, if it had to do with the idea of using different tools, and whether it's a lever or a pulley or something like that, then getting some math involved of, in including that. So having the different disciplines cross over in your work is really important. And then giving it some kind of purpose. So a rich project with real purpose and authentic products. You basically don't want your students just creating a project just for the fun of it and be like, that's cool, but we're never going to use this again. But actually, not only are they learning, discovering, creating, problem solving, but they actually have a purpose in like how it could be used in real life. Another thing to consider is the different types of technology that they'll be using. Since it is a digital age, there's a lot of skills in that that are now required of students to be learning. So the students become the information artists, and they are going to essentially, it's going to be up to them to find the info, assess its value and validity, take in data, and develop their own understanding of it. And that's the whole purpose of a project-based learning. Another part of it is what dispositions or attitudes can you cultivate in students. So understanding like what they're going to be gaining from the project, whether it's hard work or not giving up, or just what they think about um, their project as they're going through and solving problems. They're obviously going to face challenges and at times maybe want to quit, but just seeing them work through it and being determined and persistent and not just giving up easily. Another thing the book mentions in chapter three that I thought was really interesting, as I was saying, another thing that they mentioned that I thought was really interesting is the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And I think that having a project-based learning in the classroom will really help you to discover the difference in those students. Some students who try and get challenged and then feel like giving up and think, oh, well, I can't continue with this, versus students who will try and then be like, oh, well, I couldn't figure it out, but maybe I can change this. So I think that's important for figuring out in students and helping them become successful learners. So I think that all students are capable of that. It's just a matter of getting their hands on something and seeing kind of how they look at things and how they problem solve and how they communicate with others. So I think that there's a lot of value to having project-based learning in the classroom. So in chapter 4, it gives a lot of strategies for discovery and ways to make the project-based learning really great and not just something that's simple. So it really stresses thinking outside the box and being a critical consumer or a critiquer yourself. There's a lot of examples of project-based learning out there, and it suggests looking at those, but not just settling and just picking one for the sheer fact of it, but actually assessing it and asking questions about it, and making sure that it actually fits your students and how and the learning outcomes that you want them to get out of it. Um, so it also suggests like sharing your ideas with colleagues and others and seeing their thoughts and really working collaboratively, not only with the teachers in your same grade, but also teachers in a grade below and above, particularly above, to really get them, if they're already starting to gain this experience and think critically now, how much more can they build on it the next year when they get a grade higher. So I think that that is really important too, of really sharing your ideas. And even with professionals in the field themselves, if there's a project you're doing about energy, consulting, scientists who are working in that field right now and what they think about the project, or maybe a different avenue, or maybe a different performance task that they think would be a good idea for students to do to get the most out of it. So it focuses on that and just different things to be aware of whether or not how much time you're spending on the project and whether it matches up with how much you're going to get out of it. It talks about the difference between being a thematic unit and project-based learning, how themes are good to unify learning throughout the year, but making sure it's not just saying it's about the ocean, but then just putting a whale on a math worksheet, but actually making it, okay, well, if you're going to involve math, you can keep the theme of like the ocean, but then make sure you actually like give them real stuff to do with it. It's not just a theme in the sense that everything, has a picture of the ocean or, but it actually like the interdisciplinaries of math and science and English all actually interwork and you're actually using all of that to create the project. Um, Another thing that I think that's important that they mention is to leave room in the project for students to kind of interact and almost plan out some of it themselves. I think that generating a project where every step is so detailed by the teacher, you don't really give students a chance to like own what they're learning and be a part of it and kind of morph it into their own. Because I think when they take ownership, they get more excited about it and they're more willing to put in the hard work to see it through. So that was funny. And then the last thing they talked about generating buzz. by giving it a name, giving the project a name, allowing the kids to come up with a name for it. You're essentially branding it, and then it becomes a cool thing, and the kids are excited and pumped and wanting to just dive into it. Lastly, we have chapter 5, which really focuses on assessment. There's two different kinds. There's performative assessment, which would take place along the way to help students adjust, fix, or guide them in a new direction, depending on where they're going with their project. And then the summative assessment, which would take place at the end, whether their kids are presenting, evaluating, testing, measuring, somehow measuring student learning, and evaluating the project. Did it lead to intended learning outcomes? What did they get out of it? And yeah, what did they learn after doing it? Not that they just produced something, but the means of how they got there is kind of the basis for it. The chapter also talks about having a rubric, which would be used for summative assessment, how there's one where you can customize, one that's already done by the school, if the whole school kind of uses the same lingo and has one already set in place, how you can customize it for whatever your project based on the content or the subject matter. Obviously, there'd be a little tweaking done, or how you can completely make one yourself and obviously look at examples. And with that, just focusing on the ideas of the performance test. So for the rubric, just different performance tests on you knowing that they actually learned and understood the point of the project. So whether it's, some kind of self-evaluation or creating something new, or having another way to assess what that I thought was a good idea is having experts in the field come in and actually judge the projects and giving feedback. And the book just mentioned how excited students get, and I can see this particularly for high schoolers, how seriously they would take the projects if they knew that an expert from the field was really going to take a look at what they created, to see, and judge it by those actual standards and see how worthy it is. So I think that's really cool and necessary. And then for the formative assessment, I think the most important thing was talking about setting milestones and giving them kind of periodic check-ins to see how they're doing, and giving that instant feedback. It's one thing to give a test at the end and be like, oh, you either did good or bad, but if they did not do good, it's like at that point it's almost too late to help or to tell them, hey, well, we could have gone there, or did you consider this? Asking those questions. Those are the kinds of things that need to happen along the way when they're doing a project, not when the project is due. So I think that was really good. And it said to lay out an actual calendar so that it's purposeful, it's intentional, and it actually happens. At day 2, you should kind of giving them a rough idea of this much of the project should be done, or you should have had this task completed. Or giving them an exit ticket of sorts or something like that, to just kind of see where they're at, or give them a chance to ask questions, rather than waiting to the last minute and them not. Because the thing that they focus on more is not so much giving a grade on a project that they produce, but rather just having them think critically, produce, synthesize, and be able to generate real products and understand the concepts of what they did along the way, kind of their journey along the way, more than anything, and how important that is, and be able to give them a platform to actually share their ideas and communicate and present it and feel proud and own their work. So I think that's really important. So I really liked learning about project-based learning, and I am excited for the future to create some of my own projects and see my future students complete them.